The Immortal Game by Aesthetic Bee. Chapter 10 Daughters and Daughters. Esteem walked with deliberate nonchalance throughout the scene of the battle. Puppets occupied the streets, doing their best to subdue the Loyalists, but they were failing. Earth ponies and Pegasi were practically useless against the powerful unicorn, and the Loyalists had them to spare. Even the unicorns could barely hold their own, though Esteem was not surprised. The strongest race of puppets did little more than throw shards, use telekinesis, and cast magic missile. Yes, Esteem reflected, while their purview of skills was enough to subdue the average pony, they were woefully ineffective against the organized, militarized population of Canterlot. He shook his head in dismay as he watched a unicorn puppet get crushed under a collapsing building. Their only advantage was in numbers. Esteem drew a basic shield around himself, and the cadet, as dust and debris from the collapsing building reached them, he would need to have the repair crew magically fix the structure sometime within the week. The crew was a useful thing to have. The Loyalists and the Royal Army would likely have destroyed Inner Canterlot 3 times over as they were not around. Cadet! Esteem stopped and waited for the dust to clear. Yes, sir? I have in my possession what I believe the only copy of Power to Destroy. Remind me when we can return to the palace, and I will let you read it. I would like that very much, sir. Your performance in the field lately has convinced me that you deserve the knowledge contained within its pages. The way you held against that pretty little unicorn was particularly creative. He was nothing impressive, sir. I should not have let him get away. Unimpressive is not how I would describe him, Esteem said thoughtfully. You survived the entirety of 2 minutes against one of the enemy's strongest blade casters. It was a feat that deserves no small amount of praise. That said, I'd like you to return to the palace. I can handle things from here myself. As he said the words, a force field struck the bridge way above them, causing bits of stone rubble to rain down onto Esteem's shield. He looked on as a group of earth-pony puppets were destroyed by a series of Azure magic missiles. The bolts of Rarity burnt holes as wide as a hoof in the earth ponies before bursting against cobblestones. The cadet sounded concerned as he spoke. Are you sure, sir? The Loyal's here! Loyalist, cadet. This is the work of one pony. Now go. Yes, sir. Esteem watched lazily as the Loyalist's magic finished out the remaining puppets. The color of the spellcrafting tipped him off to his opponent's identity. He was about to fight one of the strongest unicorns the Loyalists possess. Esteem ran his tongue over a sharpened hoof. He could not have been pleased. Once his opponent destroyed the remainder of the puppets, Esteem drew Casimir component shards from beneath his blade-casting robe. The robe was an exceedingly light garment of pitch black, made of cloth he had ordered, specially enchanted to possess a glossy finish. It looked quite fitting on him. He considered for a moment where his foe might be. Inner Canterlot was characterized by its tall, round buildings and arcing bridgeways that ran between them. The streets were narrow, and any building tended to have at least 2 balconies. The confined spaces and multiple levels of elevation were naturally advantageous to unicorns. Esteem selected 4 Casimir shards and charged them with telekinetic energy before sending them through the air and towards their targets. 2 struck the building directly opposite him, burying themselves in stone walls. The other 2 were embedded to the underside of a bridgeway and an overhanging balcony. Esteem gently plucked an errant strand of mane away from his eyes, and he willed the shards to release their payloads. There was a series of explosions, causing the balcony, bridgeway, and the building itself to collapse. The 4 shards of Casimir sped back through the dust and rubble to interlock with their kin, sending the full blade before the general. They were useful things, explosions. I will err on the side of caution, Esteem called out. Assume you were not killed by the blast. Well, my good enemy, I am standing right here. Come out and kill me if you can! A dozen bright azure bolts of heresy spiraled out of the dust towards him. Esteem dissembled his blade and intercepted all of them with Casimir shards. Then he cast a complex spell, focusing on a point next to what he calculated as the origin of the missiles. The world around him shifted, and Esteem blitzed through space between his original position and point of his spell, a blur of motion. Dust parted as he tore through the uncanny electricity. It took him a tenth of a second to cross the distance and land next to his unicorn opponent. Both of their blades were disassembled in the air behind Esteem, but the general was trained in hoof-to-hoof combat. As he caught Casimir through the air, he struck his enemy in the chest with a foreleg, then swept his other foreleg under him and flipped his opponent to the ground. Casimir assembled in the air above him and brought it downward to viciously slay the other unicorn. His strike was blocked, however, by another unicorn blade, a glowing slash of amethyst light. Steam immediately drew Casimir back to deflect an incoming blow from the azure blade. Then he parried a jab from the amethyst one. He scared Casimir for a diversion, then blitzed back to his original position to face his two opponents. Why did everything always have to get so complicated? You two, he said to the white mare who had joined their little duel. His blade started tessellating into the full weapon in front of him, and he regarded the two unicorns. I suppose you two have as good as a reason as any to want me dead. Steam smiled. He blitzed in and began to duel between the two unicorns. They were good with magic, but their blade casting was poor, and Steam could easily hold them both at bay with lightning-fast strikes. He stood almost motionless between the two unicorns as Casimir went back and forth. This is thus embarrassing, you two. Surely you have more than this. The mare backed up a step as her horn flashed. A lightning bolt arced between them, but Steam was all ready for it. He blitzed a short distance backward and caught the electric spell on his blade, sending it towards the stallion. The stallion wrenched his shield in time, and Steam broke a point shard off of Casimir and buried it to the ground between the two ponies. He blitzed backward again, landing several dozens of feet away from the couple, then willed the shard to explode. Dirt and shattered cobblestones were thrown upward by the blast. Each of the unicorns rolled out of the way in time to avoid most of the damage, but the Steam used his telekinesis to tear a wall off a nearby stone and throw it at the stallion. At the same time, he shattered a nearby window and tossed the glistening shards of glass at the mare. Both projectiles reached their targets. Steam used his mobility spell to blur the distance between himself and the stallion, whom he considered to be the weaker opponent. Steam should have had him. The stallion had to use all of his concentration to shield himself from the storefront, and his wife was distracted by the storm of glass. Steam raised his blade, overjoyed that he was finally getting a kill the irritating stallion. The white mare appeared out of nowhere in the air before him, wielding her blade and blocking Steam's swing yet again. The general gritted his teeth in frustration and pushed Casimir against the mare's blade. "Red Midnight!" she said. "We can't take him! I'll cover you!" The azure unicorn got to his feet and looked at the two of them. "As soon as he gets to be too much, you get out, okay? No matter where I am, you run." "I know, dear. I love you." "I love you, too." Steam watched with frustration as the azure unicorn took off down the street. He could chase the unicorn, but where would that get him? Midnight was far from defenseless, and he still had to deal with the stallion's wife. He looked over her clashing blades and let his face strike at a wide smile. "She looked just like you, Starlight." Okay. This is one of those times where you forget a small detail in a fic that you've read a long time ago and you enjoyed, and then you come back to it after several seasons have passed, and now you come to a point where you're reading and you suddenly see the wrong name. I have no idea what I'm going to do for this one. Gee, what am I going to do here? Should I go with my usual Starlight Glimmer voice, or should I go with my Twilight Mom's voice? Well, first things first, I think I'm going to have to start revising this part here and just call her Velvet. Otherwise, during the rest of this story, every time I read Starlight's name, I'm going to imagine that Esteem is right now fighting Starlight Glimmer. And if I'm right about Starlight Glimmer and blade casting, in spite of all her power, she probably wouldn't be that good of a blade caster. Why, you might ask? Well, you see, blade casting requires a lot of willpower and a lot of strength. And I think it would be a far more interesting plot if Starlight suddenly realizes she doesn't know what she's fighting for. She doesn't realize what she's having the will to fight for or the strength to fight for something. So she might even have only a few blade casts because she doesn't know how to do it. So, back to the story. She screamed for Celestia over and over again. It was until I was holding her down that she called out for you. Velvet screamed incoherently and lashed out with a series of powerful blows. Esteem blocked them with ease. He knew he wasn't going to kill her. Not tonight. But that didn't mean he couldn't have a little fun. You know, Velvet, you'll have a certain determination that I admire. I should think you would make a good wife. Starlight looked appalled. Not on an empty sky, General! I didn't mean now, Velvet. You're far too old for me. Twilight was closer to my age, but she lacked your spirit. She was a sniveling coward. Still, our children would have been powerful indeed. Velvet spat. One of these days, Esteem, I'm going to kill you. I don't care if I have to take Canterlot brick by brick. I will hunt you down. There'll be no place you can hide you're safe from me. You understand? I will make this world to destroy the bastard who took my daughter away! With that, she vanished. Esteem let out a long sigh. Teleportation was perhaps the most irritatingly powerful ability he had ever encountered. Still, he set the Loyalists running. That was something at least. Queen Terra was beautiful even by Alicorn standards. Her coat had the vibrant green of grass in springtime, her mane a volumous mass of sunshine yellow ether. It flowed around her head and neck, radiating outward with ferocious intensity. Her eyes were a dip of reed's brown that seemed to drink in every sight around her with childlike eagerness. The crown sitting atop her head was made of vines and blossoms. Celestia watched as the multicolored flowers would open and close, growing before her very eyes. Terra had a certain life about her that Titan lacked, while the king radiated a sense of unshakable stability. Terra was always in motion, always letting something new capture her attentions. When the queen made some new discovery, or found some novel way to entertain herself, she would smile. The sun itself might look upon her with envy for the way she shone. Or perhaps that was just Celestia. Had Celestia ever been so beautiful? Certainly now she could not compare to the queen of the world, but what about when she had been a goddess herself? She doubted she could ever match Terra's radiance, her charisma, and natural force of personality. She was mortal, a pony with no magic to speak of, no wings, no horn. Celestia had believed that she was humble and equine enough to admit that all ponies were equal. Power did not make the pony, that she was no less herself than her magic. The truth was, she hadn't been anything less than the most powerful and arguably the most beautiful pony in Equestria in over 1,000 years. Now she was the weakest, the only mundane pony in existence. She was empty, and the sun obeyed another. Terra saw Celestia, and her face broke into a magnificent, infectious smile. To a pony who never met her, it would be beautiful and heartwarming. To Celestia, it was chilling. She knew what made her mother happy. "Hi, Sunshine." "Hi, Mom." Terra crossed the room suddenly, stopped inches away from her daughter. "Don't call me that, Sunshine!" Her mane stretched out and licked Celestia's face warmly. "Don't call me Sunshine!" Terra raised an eyebrow. "Why not? It's not my son anymore now, is it?" The strands of Terra's mane pushed against Celestia's face, squeezing into her nostrils and pressing up against her chin. "I suppose you're right. So you got bored and longed for my conversational skills?" Terra laughed and licked her lips. "Not entirely, Celestia. You always want to talk about the same boring things." She walked over to the ancient stone table that sat in the center of the room. "No, I'm just exhausted, you see. King Titan has me making many puppets as I physically can. This is more than you might expect. Keeps the army in numbers and me weak. Can't have his lady wife try to kill him again, now can he?" Celestia dropped all pretenses. "You despise him, Terra." Again Terra laughed, playing with her voice the most beautiful instrument Celestia ever heard, that any pony could hear. "Of course I despise him, Celestia. He's the only thing more powerful than I am. And for that reason I will never, ever be able to escape him." "You tried before." Terra's face darkened. "I did, yes. And I was cast beneath my own firmament for over 1,000 years by my daughters, if you recall. But only after that my dear husband brought me to the brink of destruction." "I could help you. Together we could—" Celestia suddenly found herself bite down on her tongue in the middle of her sentence as Terra's magic violently forced her mouth shut. Terra examined the objects on the table before her, rearranging them to her desired order. "Stop being such a child!" Her magical grip was released, and Celestia fought to sneak past her bleeding tongue. "I'm older than you now, Mother." "But you are older than him," Terra answered. "Not all of us together are older than him, even if we were." She levitated a dull metal implement from off the table beside her. She examined it, smiling, then brought the pointed tool to hover in front of her daughter. Celestia tried to draw away. "He knows things, Celestia. He is 3,000 years old. You can't imagine the things he's capable of. He can break into the mind into pieces to think for himself. He can make you do whatever he wills you just by looking into your eyes. He breaks all the rules, Celestia. Do you think any of us can fight the pony who holds himself above trivial things like reality and truth? I tried, He swatted me down like an insect. Terra smiled her beautiful smile again. Celestia fought against her restraints. The Queen spoke. I didn't come here to have this conversation with you again, Sunshine. This is a leisure visit. I came here for pleasure. Celestia screamed, Empty sky, Terra! I'm your daughter! Terra selected another implement. Do you think that means anything to an alicorn? She said quietly. The wooden tool descended. Celestia split her mind 2 ways as her mother proceeded. She had one take the body. It would experience all of her pain. It would scream, beg, ask her mother for forgiveness. Because Celestia, like any pony, had a breaking point. It would ever so slowly go insane. When that happened, Celestia would have to break her mind again, and again after that. Soon there wouldn't be anything left of her. Her solution was only a temporary one. There was no way she could truly stop herself from experiencing Terra's torture. I would much rather be doing this than Luna, you know. She's the one who betrayed me. But you're the one who backstabbed your dear father. So he's the one that gives me to play with. He's so considerate, wouldn't you agree? By now, the first Celestia was screaming, and doing so was giving Terra what she wanted. The second Celestia was busy observing. She took note of every expression that crossed Terra's face, every spasm that racked her body, every twitch and jerk. She interpreted everything that Terra had said earlier, everything she was saying now. She had been doing this for over a month. She just put these observations to use. Terra watched her writhing with a look of satisfaction. Just be glad Titan doesn't have time to do this himself. He would create for you 1,000 new ways to experience torment. In a way, I envy you. When I need punishing, there's no pony but him to carry it out. The Queen turned and walked to where Celestia had been tied to a wall. She leaned in to whisper Celestia's ear, voice perfectly steady and sane. When I met him for the first time, she said softly, his name was Order, and he was good. Like you were. Like I was. With that, she turned back to the table and selected another tool. Celestia stared on in utter shock and disbelief. Was Terra telling her the truth? She assumed that Titan had been driven Terra insane, that 1,000 years of the king of the world had broken Terra's mind. If what Terra had said is true, it confirmed her theory. It also made Terra deserving more pity than hate. The first mind disagreed. You got to be queen of the world for so long, Celestia. Beautiful and loved at the top of the paradise you created. Me, I used to be like that too. I used to sing, and not a single soul could help but love me when I did. Not even Titan, though he loved how I was loved rather than loved me. Terra seemed as she couldn't decide between 2 particularly promising-looking tools, so she settled for both of them. Dimly, Celestia's mind heard her first mind screaming. We used to be so good. Terra ran her mane along Celestia's cheek. Look at us now. Rainbow Dash? The sound of Twilight's voice caused an immediate feeling of fear to surge through Jazz's body. She froze. She regained her composure a moment later. Yeah? She focused on making her bed, facing away from the unicorn standing in the doorway. I brought you a map of your route to the rendezvous. Piggy Pie says she has it memorized, but she can be a bit unpredictable. Twilight gave an extremely weak laugh. Dash continued to make her bed, being as slow about as she could. Thanks. You want to talk, Dash? Maybe later. Alright, I'll leave this here. With that, Twilight left. As soon as the door closed, Dash sunk to the floor beside her bed and began to shiver. It wasn't Twilight, she thought. It was Nihilus. Nihilus is dead. But that didn't change the fact that the insanity had conditioned Dash to immediately answer at the sound of Twilight's voice, to feel fear at the very sight of her. She wanted to obey her every command. Now, Rainbow Dash was expected to act normally around the unicorn. She couldn't even act normally around Fluttershy. They'd been living together for almost a month. Dash walked over to the doorway and picked a map off the ground, then began to don her armor. She had the feeling it was going to be a long day. I know I can, Twilight was saying as they moved through the dark passageways of the labyrinth. I'm just not going to. The cool violet light of her horn illuminated the stone before them. Thou hast unthinkable power, Twilight Sparkle. If thou wilt fight, Twilight's voice became hard. I'm not going to hurt other ponies! Come now, Twilight. Rarity's lifting tones echoed through the stone corridor. You know as though the puppets are real ponies. I know, Rarity. I just can't. Thou must understand, Twilight Sparkle. If thou... Nihilus tossed Luna through the building as though she were nothing more than a toy. The power was accelerating. She looked around the screaming town's ponies. and lamented the fact that destroying buildings was the only collateral damage she was allowed to cause. I can't, okay? The ponies around her drew back in shock. Twilight herself was surprised at the volume of her words. It isn't like you could always choose the hard path either, Princess. 1,000 years ago, you could have killed your father and didn't. This is the result, Twilight! Luna's voice boomed through the labyrinth. Do you think I do not wish I had slain them both when I had the chance? I wish it more than thou can possibly imagine. I'll stay back and help plan. I'll break barriers for you. I'll use the elements of harmony. I'll enchant Pony's armor. I just can't fight, Princess. I'm sorry. So be it, Luna said stiffly. After that, a silence fell over the group, and they proceeded through the labyrinth. Only once did they come across a chasm, Twilight blinking to the other side while Luna carried Rarity and Coconut over. They had decided to take the former captain with them. They already knew more than they could afford to let their enemies know, thanks to Twilight. Luna had decided she should remain under the princess's watchful eye until they could pass her off to the Inner Soil Loyalists. Twilight did think it was a shame they had to treat Coconut like an enemy. The mare seemed like a good pony, even as he did think Twilight was their race's savior. When they arrived at the exit, Twilight disguised them by changing their mane and coat colors. The process would have gone quickly, save for the fact that Rarity spent 10 minutes fussing about the color of her mane. Luna knew a much more complex version of the spell, and disguised herself on her own to account of the fact Twilight couldn't hide her horned wings. Luna opted to make herself a banana yellow unicorn with a bubblegum pink mane. What? She said in response to Rarity's grimace. It's just done well. We are disguising ourselves, are we not? I look nothing like Princess Luna, disguised successful. Twilight was just happy Rainbow Dash wasn't around. She didn't want to see Dash using her spell. Thankfully, the circular metal disc that led to the sea opened up in the middle of a warehouse, and no pony was around. So, Twilight. Coconut said to her as Rarity removed her blade-casting robe and stowed it in Twilight's null space. Luna's spell disguised both the princess's robe and her armor. Yes, Coconut? Don't you find it a little odd that Celestia taught you both the layout of the labyrinth and the basics of warfare? Celestia didn't teach me either of those things. I learned them on my own. Or at least, she thought she did. Except Celestia had been one to give her the first maze book, and the one to choose every book on Twilight's first bookshelf. Was it possible Celestia had intentionally given Twilight the tools she would need to coordinate a rebellion beneath Canterlot? Had Twilight manipulated into being another one of Celestia's tools? Was that the princess's intention from the beginning? She had to admit to herself she was too perfect of a coincidence. It hurt to think that Celestia, the pony who had been like a second mother to Twilight, had used her. Twilight didn't believe she was just a tool to the princess. Celestia loved her. Then why didn't she come to rescue us, kiddo? Twilight stopped dead in her tracks. The voice came from the back of her mind. Coconut gave her a concerned look. Did I say something wrong? No, Twilight managed. It's nothing. Let's just keep going. It had been nothing. Twilight was distressed in hearing things. The weather outside was overcast and dreary, and the streets were mostly empty save for a few puppets. The minions stood perfectly still, their soulless glares tracking the party as they progressed into Bolted Square, which was bisected by the colossal white wall that was Empyrean's barrier. There they waited, trying to look inconspicuous. It didn't take long before Twilight spotted an incandescent pink flare floating in the sky. Luna turned to the three ponies. Act! She shouted. Orders were followed. Twilight retrieved Rarity's robe from Null Streets and tossed it to the unicorn. The air around Luna shimmered, and the princess launched herself into the air as she dropped her disguise. Twilight dropped her own disguise as she turned to face the barrier. Keep your distance, she said to Coconut and Rarity. This could be dangerous, and I need to concentrate. She turned to see Rarity already had her blade at the ready, and was facing a group of approaching puppets. Before Rarity could engage them, Luna aligned amongst the puppets and obliterated them with several enthusiastic hacks of her corrosive blade. Right, Twilight said to herself. I guess you two have that covered. She turned to the looming blare. I'll start my thing. Twilight extended her magical senses and began to probe the construct. She concentrated, losing herself in the pattern of its magic and becoming blind to the outside world. She fell into the magic, forgetting about Rainbow Dash or fighting, or the voice she heard. She examined Period's barrier. The barrier was a wonder. A magical construct that required power on a massive scale. Twilight imagined it took Empyrean all his magic to sustain it. If he was a DD alicorn sustaining the barrier. What's more, the spell that constituted the barrier was incredibly complex. It was the system, Twilight Sparkle had to break it. In theory, a perfect magical system was impossible. Every spell had weak points, just like physical matter, Twilight thought, examining the barrier. A typical enchantment was like a glass for drinking out of, functional, but also easily breakable. Even a small effort could cause the glass to shatter. This made sense, as an enchanter rarely had to take into account another unicorn deliberately attempting to undo their work. The barrier was different. Naturally, it had been designed to withstand any unicorn meddling, rather than being made of glass. It was made of steel. The energy required to change or destroy it would have to far exceed the energy spent to create it. Twilight didn't have that kind of energy. No pony did. Simply smashing the barrier to pieces was not an option. Which means I'm going to have to alter the system, Twilight thought. She felt a small surge of excitement. She was about to start playing with the most powerful spell that had ever existed. Twilight examined the barrier, and was determined to not make it a conjuration. This much she had already guessed. The very idea was preposterous. It would take 100 times the energy the barrier did in its current state. Instead, it was a massive moment field. The barrier would detect when an object moved into its vicinity, then apply a pulsing force the same way a magical object might. This way, energy was only spent keeping objects or ponies away when needed to. Woven within the moment field was a magical dampening field, to prevent unicorns from affecting anything through the barrier with their own magic. Nihilus used a similar field on the cages in her audaciously preposterous flying castle. The thought of Nihilus didn't bother Twilight Sparkle. She was working. The moment field was interwoven with the dampening field, so it could be sensed but not affected by unicorn magic. The dampening field would have to be destroyed first. Since the dampening field was attached to a kind of web Twilight had never seen before. It was though billions of interconnected nodes flowed and pulsed through the barrier, directing that energy that constituted the magical construct. It was with great appreciation that Twilight recognized the web as a collective spell, an enchantment tethered to the other fields. It meant Twilight would not be able to affect the barrier in a local fashion. Any energy, any of her magic that was directed at one second of the barrier, would immediately be redistributed to the entire thing. She couldn't strike it with a hammer. She had to use a paddle. The collective spell could be destroyed, but whoever created the barrier had also spun an entropy scope to guard the barrier. The scope would intercept any magic Twilight sent at it, and split and spread across it into harmless energy. Finally, the entropy scope was woven back into the collective spell, protected by a reflex mirror, a spell designed to take her spell's energies and turn them against one another. To top it all off, each defense was protected by the basic suite of spells that an enchanter would normally use to make their enchantments more durable. Twilight took the barrier in, and a tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, or a tear of despair. Truthfully, Twilight still had no idea if she was capable of breaking the system. Rarity, emotion that finally spoke her stony, logical composure was pure wonder. It was the same thing she had felt when she first watched Princess Celestia raise the sun. A barrier, the work of art. Creation, pure genius. Its architect had woven 5 of the most complex skills Twilight had ever seen together. A feat that required the balancing of a dozen different variables. The architect had been able to think in at least 5 dimensions, and had to have both unbelievable power and total mastery over that power. She had to possess incredible acumen in every aspect of magic Twilight could imagine. Not only pulled it off, but he had done so seamlessly and elegantly, using the absolute minimum amount of energy possible. Twilight was looking at a wonder of the world, a system as perfect as it could possibly be. A system almost indefinitely complex, but at the same time totally predictable. It was beyond the chaos of ponykind. Twilight felt terrible for having to destroy it. She tried to fathom what kind of a mind would create such a thing, and decided the only answer was King Titan. It was easy to see why he sought a natural order to all things. Twilight frowned and looked at the barrier again. The moment field and dampening field were woven together as a block of pure steel. The collective spell meant that she was swinging at them with a pizza paddle instead of a hammer. The reflex mirror meant that the block would swing back and intercept the paddle with its own hammer. If she got past the reflex mirror, the entropy scope would cause her paddle to burst into flames and be reduced to ashes. The laws of magic state that no system can be perfect, she thought. After the mazes she had done block puzzles, cute little things to help train the unicorn for polycasting. Most unicorns began polycasting in their 20s. Twilight had started when she was 11. Block puzzles were always simple, but never easy. Twilight had needed to push blocks around an enclosed area until she could move a specific block, usually colored red, through the other side of the enclosure in an exit hole. The area would normally be clogged by multitudes of other blocks, to a point where there was typically only one solution. Before a unicorn was ready to polycast, they had to be able to solve the puzzle using the minimum amount of moves possible. This meant they would have to work backwards, determining which block would need to be moved at first, so as to set up a chain of moves that would bring them victory in the most efficient way possible. Twilight needed to apply the same strategy here, she reasoned. She needed to turn her paddle back into a hammer. That wouldn't be enough, however. She needed a way to break the block of steel with just a hammer. The force she could deliver might be constant, but the requisite force that would break the barrier? A stroke of genius. A spark. Twilight began to spellcraft, losing herself in the blissful rationality of the process. First, she prepared a spell to peel away the lesser protections surrounding each of the 5 major obstacles. They were designed to eat any males of spells, so it would give them a poison apple, a spell they would eat. Her spell would turn them against one another, causing the lesser enchantments to eat each other well. The lesser enchantments were still coupled to the collective, however. Twilight couldn't take the system apart piece by piece. She would have to hit it with a series of spells all at once. She mentally buried a spell to uncouple the reflex mirror from the whole, then tied it with a meta spell to another spell that would provoke the entropy scope. The entropy scope would last out a Twilight spell, but when it did, Twilight would redirect the reflex mirror with another spell so as to catch and deflect the entropy scope with magical assault. The two would effectively cancel one another out, the entropy scope breaking its own power into useless raw energy. For it to work, Twilight would have to hit the couple between the collective and entropy scope with another spell at the same time as she redirected the reflex mirror. She tied these 2 spells together with a meta spell too. She was already managing more spells than she would normally have dared to attempt to hold in her mind, let alone cast under normal conditions. She tried to formulate her penultimate spell, one that was aimed at the collective enchantment, and thus by far the most complex she would use. But she fell. She couldn't manage to hold that many ideas in her mind all at once. She had gotten this far was astounding, but she wasn't going to be able to break the barrier. "Let me help!" said a voice. That Twilight was beyond even the most powerful emotions, floating in a world of logical thought. The voice did not startle her. "You aren't real," she answered. "You were destroyed completely. There were no traces of the sliver on me when I woke up. I must be insane." "I am not Nihilus, and we aren't insane. You know what this is. You know you can use it." Twilight pondered her own words for a moment. Did she know? It seemed unlikely she would lie to herself. "A fracture," she said. "A piece of my mind split from the whole. How could I split my mind into 2 parts? Why would any pony do that?" "Because," her own thoughts answered her, "we knew we were changing. We knew we were spending so much time with her thoughts would turn us into a monster too. When we looked through her eyes and saw her do the things we did, we wanted something. Do you remember what it was? I wanted to be free. Now get out of here! We wanted her to die. We wished we could show her how those spells she was learning really were meant to be cast. Do you remember one of the last things you said to her?" Twilight tried to ignore the voice, but couldn't. It was a part of her. "We told her she never deserved a moment of happiness, you and I. She begged us for her life, and we told her what we thought of her. You know what? It felt good." A cold feeling crept along the back of Twilight's neck. She wanted to detect some hint of internal manipulation coming from the barrier. She wanted to call the voice a liar. "A pony can't split their mind into 2 parts. It's impossible." "I agree. Funny how we're both still here." "I don't want to be like you." "So don't be. I'm not a crazy axe murderer who wants to burn the city to the ground. I'm not out to laugh maniacally as I murder all our enemies. I don't want a silly flying castle. I'm not her. You aren't her. We aren't her. I'm just a little different." Twilight was skeptical. "Different how?" "For one, I exercise a little modesty. We're the only pony who can argue with themselves while juggling a suite of meta spells designed to break the king of the world's unbreakable shield. I think we all have our pride. Also, you're being absurdly pacifistic. You don't want to fight the soulless contracts trying to hurt your friends. What are you so afraid of?" Twilight knew the other part of her already knew. Becoming like her. "You're smarter than that. Nihilus was almost our exact opposite. You can't just shut away every part of yourself that reminds you of her. Then you're only half a Twilight Sparkle. You're broken." Twilight had to admit she was making a lot of sense. The weight of the spells were straining her to her limit. "So what do you suggest?" "We could be strong without being evil. We could protect the ponies we love without torturing the ponies we hate. Our friends seem to manage that quite nicely." Twilight reached into her mind, exploring the depths of her consciousness to find the source of her voice. Her voice. "This is so weird," she thought. "I'm in way over my head." Still, she delved deeper, so she found a piece of herself she had split from a hole. So she didn't even know splitting one's consciousness was magical feat or not. She wondered briefly if she was well and truly insane. She tested herself, then took the fragment of her consciousness into the hole. It felt right, as though she had been missing that part of herself since she awoke in Ponyville. She looked again at the barrier, then defied herself once more. Again it felt natural, so she was stepping out of the horseshoes that were sized too small. Suddenly there were two Twilight Sparkles. Neither of them the true Twilight, and neither of them a false one. Rather, there was a Twilight and a Sparkle. The first Twilight held in her mind all the spells he had formulated thus far. The second continued to work, adding the remaining two spells. The first was monstrously complex, the second of which was brutally simple. Her two minds held the spell in her thoughts. Ready, Twilight? Ready, Sparkle. Ready, Belle? Ready, Spark. Through an ordinary unicorn, what followed might seem like an overly complex math problem. A series of precise allotments of magical energies into their respective formulae. Boring. To Twilight and Sparkle, it was a mix between a heist and a series of coordinating explosions aimed at bringing down the moment of the gods. They were following their own spells as they cast them, letting themselves get absorbed by the energies they were manipulating. When Twilight fell, her mind would probably break. Sparkle reminded her that she might be broken already. Twilight's spell struck into the lesser enchantments. Vicious little dogs designed to eat incoming magic. They found Twilight's spell and devoured it just as Sparkle severed her couple to the hole. The dogs turned on each other. Twilight and Sparkle immediately moved to the next objective, cascading downwards on a torrent of magical power. Sparkle blew through the couple, connecting the reflex mirror to the rest of the system. Twilight handled a more delicate spell to destroy Entropy Scope's intentions. Both succeeded, and the mirror and scope began to eat away at each other, as Twilight and Sparkle rocketed ever downward in what felt like a million miles a second. It was time for their masterstroke, their ace in the hole. Sparkle rained all of their remaining magical power into a battering ram of destructive force, and Twilight wove the most complex spell that they had ever cast. Twilight hit the collective enchantment with a veritable super spell. She directed the very nature of the spell, altering its purpose only by a small amount, as she stiffened one of the bonds between the nodes that comprised it. The collective spell recognized the new bond as the norm, and every other bond as an anomaly. It quickly worked to correct the fault, causing every bond in the entire collective to change according to Twilight's specifications. The collective spell now worked against its original purpose. It would take magical forces and spread them throughout the collective barrier as intended, but not mitigate them over the entire surface area. Instead, it performed the opposite function, actually delivering the entire effect of one blow to every single point on the barrier. Twilight couldn't block an entire block of steel with a hammer, so she had to make a steel glass and place a chisel beneath her hammer. The barrier was still incredibly large, but not without its point of cleavage. In the instant of time that Twilight gave her, Sparkle gleefully pounded on the chisel as hard as she could. Everything they left, every scrap of magical power, was thrown to the tiniest point she could manage. Her two minds had accomplished their task, so they came whole once again. This was Twilight's purpose, she thought. Not killing, violence, or destruction, but the manipulation of forces beyond what most ponies could comprehend. How could her friends know what she had done was so straining and dangerous as mortal combat? Twilight was brought out of her thoughts and back to the real world with a shock. She felt dizzy and disoriented, resisted the urge to vomit as she fell to the ground. She had used too much power, far too much mental discipline. What else had she done? She split her consciousness into two Twilights, or rather, a Twilight and Sparkle. She hadn't known anything was impossible. She was dimly aware of Coconut, the Earth pony who had sworn to serve Twilight and Earth before, running to her side and supporting her head. Darkness had closed her field of vision, as she fought it, desperately trying to stay consciousness. Coconut was trying to say something, smiling in her amazement. Twilight couldn't hear her. Then she watched as Coconut looked up in shock, as something outside Twilight's line of sight. Coconut jumped in front of Twilight, and a moment later, she felt warmth on her face. She watched as Coconut fall limply to the ground, realizing it struck her as she slipped into unconsciousness. Twilight never told Rarity about her father. You monster! You killed her! You killed that mare! I liked her! You just killed a mare I liked, and you are standing in a very bad place! Rarity watched as Coconut Crunch collapsed to the ground, blood spraying everywhere. She looked down at the tiny, chevron-shaped piece of enchanted platinum iridium lighted right before her hooves. It was a point shard of blade. one that Rarity immediately recognized. It was impossible. That was all Rarity could think. There was no way this could be happening. It had been over 10 years since she and Sweetbell had been taken away and given to a better home. Even with war going on, Rarity had almost entirely forgotten about him. Her eyes followed the point shard that was dragged along the cobblestones, making tiny scraping noise and leaving a trail of Coconut's blood. It reached the hooves of another unicorn, lifted into the air to affix itself to a proper place on the end of a wicked length of metal. Rarity looked beyond the blade she knew to be Kersamere, at the pure white stallion wrapped in a silky black robe. A blood-red mane of cascading spikes flowed around his head, framing the two pale eyes that Rarity herself had inherited. Dean smiled. "I hope you aren't counting on your article to save you any time soon," he said. "I brought my own, you see." He blurred through space between them, appearing beside her suddenly. It was all Rarity could do to look at him in horror, immobilized by a primal terror that had been programmed into her since she was a filly. She noted there were streaks and spatters of red plattering onto his blade-casting robe, difficult to see against the black light of the fabric. He raised his blade and delicately brushed away a strand of her mane, to look into her eyes, and smiled listlessly. "My little girl," said her father, "all grown up." It was in the air, after cleaving a Pegasus puppet in two, that Luna spotted her father, hovering not 50 feet away from her. It wasn't King Titan, of course. Luna would have felt the ancient Alicorn's presence almost immediately had he come anywhere near Canterlot. Still, the pony Luna was looking at was undoubtedly her father in some form or another. It looked very much like a Pegasus puppet, with a matte black coat and black wings. This pony's mane was made Titan's flowing white ether, though, and his eyes were a burning white. Upon its flanks burned a ghostly white circle, and another confluence of white energy formed a phantom horn on top of its head. It was average size, thus much smaller than Titan, but still close to Luna's hate. Luna was more than a little shocked at his appearance, but she did not let the emotion show on her face. She had no idea how strong Titan was in his demi-form, but she had no options other than fighting him. Rarity would have to protect Twilight Sparkle on her own. They could not let the elements come to harm. Titan brought himself to the air within a reasonable distance of his daughter. "Surrender, Luna," he said in an unravelingly sweet and resonant voice. "Even with me in this fragile form, you cannot hope to defeat me. You will, Red Empyrean." "Never!" "I see." He looked down to the streets of Canterlot. Most of the buildings had taken extensive damage, and several bridgeways had collapsed. Glasses of light could be seen where the Loyalists battled puppets. It appeared as though there was heavy fighting going on. "Ponykind," Titan said with contempt. "I grow tired of their useless attempts to resist. They have forgotten the power of their king. I do not hold it against them, of course. They are a race of beings forever struggling through infancy. I do not wish to harm them, Luna, for they are lost, and they cannot show themselves the way. Direct intervention is necessary." "Thus thou dost not deserve the right to rule them, Titan." Titan looked up at her with emotionless eyes. "And you do?" Luna swallowed. "No," she said, "I do not." "Interesting." Titan once again looked down at the chaos and the conflict beneath them. "Ponykind," he said once again. "They are insignificant specks beneath our hooves, my daughter. Faded reflections of power and the beauty of the Alicorn. They needed to be reminded of this, and so do you." Titan cast his blade, a plain, polished length of pure black. Luna remembered Terra telling her that it was named with singularity. She cast Nadir. "It had been some time," Titan mused, "since I had reason to show off. Let us hope that I am capable of the grandiose performance the Ponykind had come to expect from us. Come." With that, Titan dove downward toward Inner Canterlot. Luna was despised was doing what she was told, but what could she do? Hang on defiantly in the air as Titan slaughtered the Loyalists below? She dove, following the king. Titan and Luna landed in the middle of the urban battlefield. Unicorn and puppets were taking shots at each other from across the wide square. Their spells were obliterating the buildings around them. At the center of the stair was a mostly intact fountain. When Titan and Luna struck the cobblestones, several of the surrounding ponies stopped to look at them. Some locked in combat, did not. That changed when a spear of excessive force spread out from outward from the king, knocking every pony and puppet except Luna to the ground, clearing away debris. Every pony in the square turned to look at Titan and Luna as they faced each other. Titan spoke. "Bow before your king." The immense credit of the Loyalist presence, None of them did. They stood looking from Titan to Luna, silent. Titan switched his gaze back and forth across the square, taking in their defiance. There is a doctrine in the natural order. It states that every creature alive owes me its life, its will, and everything it possesses. Luna gritted her teeth. They owe thee nothing, Titan! You're correct, Luna. Luna tilted her head in confusion, and a murmur went through the loyalists. Titan looked upon them with no trace of expression. You could not owe what you do not possess. Have never possessed. His face twisted into a snarl. You are mine. Suddenly, Titan had crossed the space in between himself and Luna. He swung at her with singularity. The attack came out of nowhere, and Luna barely managed to block it with her own blade. The force of the blow blew her backwards as she rolled, coming to her hooves again, skidding across the cobblestones. As she righted herself, Titan had spun, crossed the square, and sliced the loyalist unicorn into 2 pieces with a single swing of his blade. He looked almost bored as he stabbed an earth pony in the chest, while simultaneously deflecting several chunks of thrown rubble with his magic. The fighting resumed, and the loyalists in the square were hopelessly outmatched facing this king and his puppets. What was more, the puppets were acting with a sudden cohesion they usually lacked, so his Titan presence alone made them more intelligent, which Luna supposed was entirely possible. She had no idea what kind of magic her father was capable of. Luna split herself into a swarm of bats and threw herself towards the king. As she sped through the air, she passed over 2 unicorn puppets, tearing them apart with thousands of tiny fangs. She reached Titan just as he raised singularity to strike down another pony. Luna reformed in front of Titan's target, a unicorn, and blocked Titan's swing with Nadir. She tried to stab him. Titan parried lazily, even as he tore the wall away from a nearby building, breaking it into splinters before casting them at his daughter. The unicorn behind Luna threw up a shield spell to block the splinters as Luna continued to duel the king. She called the powers of winter, and the ground beneath her frosted over as he threw several shards of ice at the king. At the same time, she split Nadir into a dozen magic missiles and cast them through the air at the puppets across the square. Titan shared the icicles with several contemptuous sweeps of singularity, then used his own shield spell to block the fragments of wood and rescue the unicorn and decided to throw it at them. He attacked her again, and Luna beat her wings and flipped over Titan's swing as she reformed Nadir. Her blade killed 6 puppets and split into 6 missiles, opening a way for several loyalists to escape. Instead, they stayed, eating their comrades and fighting the other puppets. Titan and Luna exchanged a series of lightning flash blows as they dueled their way across the square. It was clear that the king was a much better blade caster than she, and Luna was pushed back. The king simply walked towards her, staring dispassionately at the princess as singularity beat aside every one of her blows. Their allegiances had been made abundantly clear, and occasionally a pony or a puppet would aim a spell at the princess or king. Titan easily deflected or shielded any kind of magical attacks, but Luna struggled to keep pace. Luna dodged the swing too slowly, and singularity opened a deep gash along her back, just barely missing her wings. Then, Titan struck her with a hammer blow of telekinesis, knocking her backwards into the fountain that occupied the center of the square. He struck her with his mind once again, and the stone fountain shattered, the blow sending Luna sprawling across the rubble. Titan was not trying to kill Luna. He turned away from her, flapped his wings, and crossed the square once again to begin killing ponies. Pain made its presence known in every part of Luna's body, but she did not let terror deter her. She stood up and followed the king. Again he raised his blade to strike down a loyalist, this one an earth pony. Again Nadir intercepted his blow. Titan threw his magical weight behind singularity, pressing downward on Luna's blade. The princess grunted and threw her weight against Nadir. Her blade flared. "Save him," Titan said, referring to the pony puppy Luna was protecting. "Save him today, and you will die tomorrow, or a week from now, or in decades. It matters not, Luna. Every pony will die, and I will rule every pony. These truths are immutable. Why fight alongside these mortals when you can rule them as a god?" Luna met her father's eyes as he concentrated completely on pushing away his blade. "I would rather fight as one of them," she managed, "and die!" She threw Titan back. Those loyalists had taken out most of Titan's puppets. Many of them were watching her fight the king. "They turned my back on mine and Celestia's kingdom. That was wrong, Titan." She spat his name out like a curse. "They do not exist to serve us. We exist to serve them." "When did you become so lost, child?" Titan swung at her, and Luna once again beat her wings and flipped over the king. She landed, and Titan's blade came down at her from above. She blocked it with a deer, but the force of the blow was jarring. While Titan tossed several chunks of solid stone at her while she was staggered. A stone struck her, bouncing off her body and threatening to throw her off balance. But she had enough Earth Pony magic to be fine otherwise. The rest of the stone struck a flimsy unicorn barrier in the air, while Luna continued to duel the king. It was the Loyalists. They were helping her. Do you truly think you can accomplish anything here? Titan walked lazily towards Luna as the princess pushed herself to her limits to keep the speed of his blade. No loss I suffer is permanent. I am eternal and unyielding. If it takes me a century to quell Ponykind's rebellion, then so be it. He continued to throw things at her as they dueled. Wood, glass, and stone were stricken out of the air by any loyalist who had magic to spare. A block of stone caught her in the side once again, however, and Luna was thrown to the ground. Luna struggled to stand as the deer was extinguished. She couldn't rise in time. Titan raised Singularity to deal her a debilitating wound. But as he brought it down, it was blocked in the air by another spell blade. Luna looked up to see a loyalist blade caster wielding a deep red shaft of light standing above her. The unicorn was wearing a black blade casting robe, and his face was streaming with exorcised defiance. Luna rolled out from the clashing blades, but before she could attack Titan herself, another unicorn joined the first and struck the surprised king with a pinpoint point of force. Titan was thrown backwards to the center of the square. The mare who had struck the king smiled at Luna as he cut to her hooves. And here we were under the impression of you were one of the bad guys, she said. Long live the princess, I suppose. The blade caster let out a non-committal grunt, more like death to the king. Luna looked up from one unicorn to the other, trying to make a decision. Thou, she said finally to the blade caster. He raised an eyebrow. Nice voice. Luna ignored the remark. Twilight Sparkle is unconscious of bolted scare. Thou must retrieve her and see her to safety. Twilight Sparkle? She is a lavender unicorn. I know what color she is. You're telling me she's alive? Indeed, I cannot save her, Luna said, looking towards Titan as he picked himself up in the center of the square. The king did not look to harm in the slightest. Luna was approaching her limits. I am needed here, please. The blade caster seemed to consider her command for a moment, then surprised. I suppose I can spare a minute for Twilight Sparkle. The way every pony talks about her around here, you think she was the best pony alive. The blade caster dismissed his weapon and ran off, then turned to the other unicorn. Keep thy distance from the king, he said. She flew off at her father once again. Titan beat his wings and met her in midair. Luna was thrown to the ground. But before he could have her with his blade, though, a unicorn tossed a wooden beam at his head. He batted away with Singularity, but another unicorn threw a swarm of glass at him. Another bubble of concussive force expanded outward from the king, and every pony, as well as the few puppets remaining in the square, were thrown to the ground once more. Luna immediately threw herself to her hooves, and exchanged another series of blows with her father. As he fought, Titan spoke. You fight for them, he said steadily, but see how impotent their attempts to harm me really are. Titan caused the ground beneath Luna to buckle as he parried a jab, once again thrown to her back. Her father pinned her. Ponykind, he said, is powerless to stop the likes of us. He raised his blade. Luna smiled and Titan paused. She looked up at the king, past him, into the air behind him. We shall see, she said simply. Then she used her magic to create her own telekinetic burst. A measure exploded between the two of them. Luna was thrown backwards against the ground, and several bones broke from impact. Titan was thrown upward into the air, where Rainbow Dash struck. It was a bolt of polychrome lightning, as thick as a tree trunk. The entire square was lit up by the intensity of the thunderstrike, and Luna had to shut her eyes. The lightning bolt was speared directly through the middle, and Rainbow Dash landed beneath him, one foreleg extended for balance as she landed nimbly on the ground. Then she shot upwards and kicked the king of the world in the face. They landed apart from each other, while Titan between Dash and Luna. Dash looked past the king at Luna. There's Alicorn puppets! She said incredulously. Luna spat out a mouthful of blood and prepared to stand back up. Be careful, she menaced. Luna did not want to see Dash temporarily get her killed. He turned back to Luna. The princess could only hear what the king was saying. I am no puppet girl. Die now! He charged, swinging Singularity horizontally. Rainbow Dash flipped over the blade and kicked him in the face once again with her hind legs. She spun to avoid the stab and punched Titan in the chest, then rolled away from another strike. You think your blows can harm me, child? No, Dash said, but they do a pretty good job of distracting you. Luna stabbed Titan in the back, and the deer devoured the king's conjured flesh. She tore the blade upward, rending Titan in two, and the king dissipated like any other puppet. Desolate to the princess. The others were safe, so I figured I came help you out. Did you see that awesome lightning bolt? It was like... Luna, she caught the look Luna was giving her and stopped. Are you alright? Luna examined herself. Her flesh had been pulverized in places, making her seem oddly misshapen. She knew she was carrying around several broken bones. Other than those things, she was quite fine. I am named Modas. Where's Twilight? I sent some pony after her. Hopefully she'll be fine. Hey, Rarity? Luna considered this for a moment. I'm not sure. Less than a second after he brushed her mane away, Esteem tried to murder Rarity. His blade snapped back, and they came arcing down toward her head, a silvery blur. Rarity managed to raise Vorpal in time to catch her father's blow. My father, she thought. She began to hyperventilate. This couldn't be happening. Esteem regarded the point where their two blades met. Good. He said, it seems Princess Luna has been building upon my lessons. Rarity felt like she was a filly again. She wanted to run away, hide in a closet, jump beneath the covers with her mother, since her mothers had never been able to protect her. She attended her father's lessons every time. She stammered, young. It was true. His father was 10 years younger than when Rarity had seen him last. It looked like he was still her age. Yes, Rarity, I am quite a bit younger now. My new job comes with excellent benefits, but I don't want to talk about work. He lowered his blade and turned around, and walked a short distance to face Canterlot. We have so much catching up to do. He called out, to start, why don't you show me all the things you learned while you're away? I'll show you inner Canterlot! Rarity tried to kill him. It was simple, really. Her father was the enemy. She watched him murder Coconut Crunch in cold blood just moments before. She doubted she had a hope of defeating him in single contact. So he attacked him while his back was turned. In a perfect world, Rarity might have been able to capture or imprison her father. Certainly, that would have been preferable to killing him. But the world wasn't perfect, not anymore. She shattered Vorpal through the shards at her father. Before they had crossed half the distance between her and her father, however, every shard was met in the air by a fragment of Karsamir. The blade shards ricocheted off of each other. And Rarity noticed with dismay that her father reformed much faster than her own. Her father not turned around. You want to start with yourself? All right. Your shadow is quite effective. It certainly has speed, but it lacks precision. My Rarity. Still, admirable nonetheless. Suddenly he was behind her, moving through the air more quickly than Rarity would have thought possible. Let's go check out the city, Salry. Then he attacked her. It was all Rarity could do to keep herself alive. Her father's blow came faster as she could track, and she began to use her magical senses to follow his blade rather than her eyes. With every blow, he beat Rarity back another step into the city. They traveled 2 blocks before Rarity realized he wasn't trying to kill her at all. He could do that at any time he pleased. He forced her back to the edge of a conflict between the Loyalists and the Royal Army. Then her father struck the blade, so Vorpal shattered as she was thrown to the ground. He slowly turned her place to face down the street. This, Rarity, was a proper shatter. He broke his blade, sent to pieces after an earth pony over 100 feet away. The shards bit into the earth pony's body more than one place. It went down with a horribly short yelp. Then her father recalled the pieces, and the pony was dragged towards him across the road. You see how accurate my streak was? Her father said, as the moaning pony let a smear of blood in his wake. You want to see how I maintain control despite the distance. You should strive for these things, my dear daughter. Rarity looked at her father in horror, and finally found the courage to speak. Monster! The earth pony came to a stop between them. It was jerked upward as the pieces of metal lodged inside his body were pulled into the air to reform her father's blade. A monster am I? He met her eyes. So be it. With 3 wide, vicious sweeps of Karsamir, Rarity's father spread the helpless earth pony all over the street around him. Rarity and her father were both covered in him. Esteem looked over at her. I am sorry, my dear Rarity. The red does not go with your mane nearly as well as it does with mine. I shall be more considerate in the future. Rarity threw her blade at her father again, but it was a futile gesture. Esteem batted away effortlessly. She tried to hit him again and again. Each time he deflected her blows. Come now, Rarity, cease this childish nonsense. I would like you to come back to the palace. Rarity looked up at the stallion who had just murdered another pony in cold blood. The stallion who had made her childhood a constant torment. Had her father, who had killed her mother. He noticed a look of disgust on her face. I didn't honestly expect you to agree at first, but of course you will. Rarity's answer was to shatter her blade and throw it at Steam. Again, he obviously thwarted her attack. This is not a fight, my daughter. He came at her again, and once more Rarity could barely keep up with his incredible anorexity. So he was forced back, through a doorway that led to a door and into a stone house. Her father continued to speak. This is not a contest of wills. He slid forth below his blade hard enough to send Rarity rolling. He parried a jab as he stepped backwards onto a ramp leading to other stories. Having the high ground didn't help against her father. His blade pivoted into and out of the attacks with a haste the Rarity doubted even Luna could have matched. What was more, his steam art was perfect. Each block was followed to a cut. Each cut forced her own blade into a compromising position. He and his blade moved a symbolic, liquid-like grace that even Rarity had to admit was beautiful. It was always control, always dictating her actions through the force of his own. It was his talent, his art. What use was Rarity's talent here? What was beautiful about the innocent blood that soaked her face and mane? He stopped and spoke when he had reached the third story. You will come with me to the Powerless, Rarity. I will not settle for any other outcome. I will do no such thing! He turned Casimir flat and slapped her across the face before she could move her own radiant weapon to intercept him. He had not suffered a blow, and Rarity tasted blood. Very well, he said merrily. They continued, and Rarity was pushed out of the building and onto an overhanging bridgeway. Her father struck Rarity's blade so hard it struck again. Rarity almost lacked the will to reform it. As he looked down, over the edges of the thin bridge containing the two structures, into the narrow streets below. Canterlot was in chaos. Windows were shattered, fragments of glass glistening in the streets. Doorways had been blown off their hinges, and here and there was a structure missing a corner, or a wall had collapsed. The tall buildings had cast long shadows over the clustered streets below. Puppets and soldiers of the royal army bowed loyalists from between the decimated buildings. Earth ponies in makeshift armor wrestled their fellow ponies in the street. Colorful blasts of magic zipped and arced between the two sides. Smaller spells dented the streets and buildings when they missed. The larger ones created pony holes. And there were corpses. Not very many, but enough. She looked over Forpal, and her smiling father, who had been dueling with her almost 10 minutes. She felt her blade-casting robe, wet with blood, sticking to her coat. What am I doing here? She whispered. This isn't me. She and her father answered her. You're doing what I taught you, Rarity. She couldn't defeat his steam, but that didn't mean she couldn't defy him. I will never be like you! He laughed. You are perhaps the strongest blade caster I ever met, my daughter. Do you think that any other pony that could keep the pace with me for more than 30 seconds? You have the gift, Rarity. Blood was dripping from Rarity's mane and down her face. I don't want it, she said. She jerked her head forward, fighting below him. This is for back! Tell me, Rarity, would you still be alive were it not for my training? Have you not used your blade to protect your friends and bring ruin to your enemies? I gave you knowledge. I gave you power, and with it you have performed magnificently. He turned and flung his sharp Casimir into a unicorn below them. Rarity knew she should have looked away, but her buried judgment failed her. She watched the unicorn explode from the inside out. Her father turned in. You may despise me, my daughter, but I never sought your love. I had to give you the tools you would need in Titan's new rule. Not just to survive, but to excel. I made you superior! Rarity took a step back from her father, as she fully realized the way of her worlds. No, she said. You could have known. Steam forcibly took a step towards her. Little girl, he said. Of course I knew. My talent, my purpose is war. War! His mouth turned to a snarl. Shara's blade sent the enchanted charge tearing through the air around them. They bit into the streets, the buildings, and some even the ponies below. No! The shards exploded, and the street below them was obliterated. Puppets and ponies of both sides were crushed and torn into shreds by flying stone and splinters. Despite the noise, Rarity could still clearly hear her father shouting, War, Rarity! It is part of the natural order, a part of our very species. It comes as easily to us as love and loathing, as virtue and vice. It separates the weak and worthless from the powerful and privileged. War ruins the individual, but it tempers the race. He snapped the pieces of this blade together so quickly, several of them blew through the edges of the bridgeway to reach their proper position. Then he thrust the blade into the stone before him. Celestia sat on her throne. Playing God. She lobotomized our race, Rarity. She expunged from our history our greatest conflicts and burnt the books that we had written. In the name of her greater good, she presumed to take from us our natural right, and for 1,000 years our race stagnated. What right did she have to decide what we could and could not do? I was born to kill, a warrior pony in a world without war. How dare she deny me a life of purpose? No! Rarity took a step away from her father. It was I who brought Titan back to this world, he declared triumphantly. I who redeemed our species! Rarity looked at her father, at the intensity of his eyes, the hard set of his mouth. She realized he wasn't lying, not to herself or her. His steam was perfectly sane. And what was more, he had taken her entire world from her. He reduced her life as a happy business owner to and a loving sister to ashes, and taken from her where her biggest worries were deadlines and the quirky antics of her friends. And when your dear mother Honeydew learned about the king, she wanted nothing to do with it. She wanted to tell the princess. She wanted to run. But you already know how to turn that out, don't you, my Rarity? Rarity attacked again, throwing all of her magical weight into a single thrust. Halfway through the moment of her attack, she staggered her blade, and 14 separate, razor-sharp diamonds sped towards her father in a cluster faster than Rarity had ever made them move. Her father caught every shot on a moment field, broke his own blade, and drove shards into Rarity's glittering diamonds. They were beaten off the bridge way to land on the ground below, as Rarity was thrown to the floor of the bridge. You are beaten, he said, leveling Casimir at her. It's useless to resist. Do not let yourself be destroyed as your mother did. I'm not like you. I'll never be you! You could destroy Imperial Rarity, you and your friends. He knows this. He fears this. Join me, and your return will be greater than anything you could imagine. You will and I will rule Canterlot as father and daughter. Eternal youth will be yours, my Rarity, and a place amongst the new nobility. Not a flock of politicking, spoiled brats, but a nobility made of the noble. A nobility made of the powerful and graceful, of the beautiful and terrible. You will be loved and respected by all, and nothing your heart could desire would be outside your grasp, not even the life of your friends. Again, Rarity looked into her father's intense blue eyes, saw he was telling the truth. If she became his daughter, she would have it all. She would live forever, young and sophisticated, with the ability to set trends wherever it was she wished. Without her, Rarity's friends would have no choice but to retire their war efforts. Rarity could ensure they lived in safety. She would be powerful, too. She was already. The steam could fasten her into a weapon as deadly as she was beautiful, and bring a blow to those who opposed her. And enemies, without exception, would die. She would have respect, fear, admiration, and security. Her father was a monster. Who could refuse such a thing? It was then that Rarity felt something else. A heaviness inside of her that was not all uncomfortable. It made her grit her teeth, raise her chin, and return the intensity of her father's stare. It flowed through her, strengthening her resolve, powering her defiance. Her friends were better than a safe compromise made with her father. They were better than a superficial unicorn who only sought the approval of others. She will not let them down. She was feeling loyalty. Then with a shock, Rarity realized she was feeling loyalty. She knew, just as she knew the sky was never empty, that Rainbow Dash was only seconds away from her. She knew Dash knew exactly where she was, and especially knew how she was going to escape. She tapped Dash's defiance, Dash's unyielding determination, and Dash's indomitable willpower. She took the emotions, traits, and spun them around inside herself, leaving Dash's drive into something she could appreciate, that she could use. You aren't beautiful. Esteem's eyes flashed. What did you say? You're petty, she said. You have form and sophistication. You have a dedication to aesthetics, but you're rotten on the inside, twisted and black. Your soul is a dead, withered thing, and anyone who sees you can tell you're hideous within. You measure others by their ability to kill as you surrender your mind to a philosophy of tyranny and oppression, while my talent is beauty, and that is the standard which I will measure you. I find you worthless, the same I feel at having you for a father. As Steve stepped back, mortified, his mouth again twisted into a snarl. Rarity rolled off the bridge. She knew exactly when and how to fall. For some reason, exactly what position she would need to assume so as to let Rainbow Dash catch her. Catch her, Rainbow Dash did. Rarity called and assembled her blade from the streets below to deflect the blow as Steve aimed at the Pegasus as they flew away. Dash was fast, incredibly fast. Steve only managed one long range assault before they were out of his reins and above the city. I thought the knights were supposed to do the rescuing, Dash said. Rarity gave her a flat look, but then felt her expression soften. Thank you, Rainbow Dash, for saving my life. I... I'm glad I have friends like you. A lucid haziness permeated Twilight's being, and she was dimly aware of the cold, smooth cobblestones beneath her. She tried to remember what had woken her from her blissful slumber, but the information escaped her like water falling through her hooves. Feeling slowly flooding back into her chilly, numb limbs, as she opened her eyes, to treat to the sight of 4 pale orange hooves resting on the orange up before her. Sparkle! Sparkle! Get up! That was what had woken from her soothing sleep, she thought easily. That voice. Did it sound familiar? She slowly turned her head upward. The motion felt strangely light to her, as though her head were weighted differently. She looked at the pony calling her name. A brown-maned, pale orange unicorn in a thin, black blade-casting robe. You're a knight, a blade-caster. She couldn't remember if it was important or not. Her thoughts were a muddled mixture sloshing about in her brain. He quirked an eyebrow. Me? I'm no pony impressive. You, on the other hand, are Celestia's most faithful. Twilight lethargically got to her hoof. I'm Twilight Sparkle. That sounds right, she said and felt a little dizzy. Here, unicorn buried his face in his hoof. Listen, Twilight, you just broke opinions, barrier. And for the looks of things, you did it by yourself. You're an automatic drag, which means you aren't sticking straight. Don't try to use any magic for an accidental royal, you understand? Slowly, Twilight nodded, her awkward feeling head bobbing up and down erratically. She knew what a magic drag was, but she never experienced one before. It only happened when unicorns ran out of magic. Instantly, she heard what sounded like explosions and ponies shouting. Here! The other unicorn said as he levitated a small medical flask out of his mouth. Just the right help. He screwed the cap and handed it to her. Twilight took a gulp of the potion, which burnt her throat down furiously. She coughed, stomach threatening to heave its contents onto the smooth cobbles below. What kind of potion is that? She spluttered between hacks. Potion? The unicorn looked at her with a mixture of confusion and amusement. That's whiskey. Good whiskey on my dad. It'll also take the heads off. Twilight's senses were starting to return to her. Where's Luna? Rarity! Your presence is the one who sent something against you. I'm sure that she's also got whoever else you just mentioned. The entrance to the royal hideout is blocks from here. I can get you there, but you'll need to do exactly as I say. There's heavy fighting going on, and while normally I'd be happy to spend as much time as possible melting enemy faces, you're reported to stuff. The sooner we get moving, the better. Between us and the hideout is half a city of pissed-off ponies and puppets trying to kill each other through gratuitous application of fire and explosions. Tony considered what the knight had said, and lifted each of her legs to test her mobility. She shook her head, hoping to clear her mind. She blinked hard at once, and nodded to the bladecaster. What did he call himself? No pony impressive? He pulled out a long draw of his whiskey before tucking away his black robe. I hope you're ready to fight for your life. He grinned. Twilight had the feeling the day was just getting started. She sighed. All right, sir, impressive. Lead the way!